Hello everybody, this is Lokai Way of Lokai, and welcome to the No Hit Podcast. Here it is my job to interview the extraordinary people in gaming, the hitless runners who beat difficult games without taking a single hit or point of damage, speedrunners completing games in mere minutes that would normally take hours, or those who have finished games completely blindfolded, or the amazing content creators and developers out there producing the engaging and entertaining content and games that we all enjoy. Today's guest is NuclearPastaTom. That's NuclearPastaTom on Twitch and NuclearPasta on YouTube. Tom is a world record speedrunner in Elden Ring and its DLC categories, which contains some of the hardest bosses Fromsoftware has ever created, also having completed several Elden Ring hitless runs and hitless completion of the highly acclaimed Lies of P, which we go into in this conversation, as well as Tom's experience in several Elden Ring based leagues or events, including the competitive Bingo Brawlers event, the appeal of routing a run, and adapting to game patches. And no, not the NPC, but what happens when weapons, skips, or changes are made that directly affect the speedrun, and Tom's first Shadow of the Erdtree playthrough doing it entirely without upgrading a weapon, and how that experience helped in future endeavours, and much, much more. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with NuclearPastaTom. Right, Tom, thanks very much for taking the time out to come on the podcast today. How are you doing, man?
Thank you for having me here. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. All ready to get started because got quite a few things I want to go into today. But where else to start but the beginning? Wanted to ask, what was your first introduction to speedrunning, if that was the first challenge run? Or
So are you asking about like the personal experience, like actually doing the speed run, or like the first time I was exposed to speedrunning?
I'd say maybe exposed, because I imagine that probably one links to the other, or perhaps
It
not.
kind of does. There's a bit of a time difference between the two.
No.
But it kind of sparked my interest when I was playing Dark Souls 3, and I was playing on the Xbox, so I didn't have a PC at the time. And I really enjoyed the game. But then I was watching Distortion 2 on Twitch, and he was doing all the speed runs, and then there are a couple other people. Squillakilla was doing like hitless runs and stuff. But when I was watching Dist and he was working on the route for the any percent and all that, I was like, I want to do that too. So I tried on the Xbox, but the FPS was so bad that I like couldn't do anything. I would practice the little tree skip at the Firelink Shrine, and then one of the early strats was throwing fire bombs over the shrine to this crystal lizard. And have it die from those. And then once you throw the fire bombs, you jump with the tree. So that was like the only thing that I could practice, because the FPS was so bad I couldn't really do any of the run afterward. So that was like the first time I was trying to do any kind of speed running thing. But then when I got my PC, it took me some time. I didn't really think I was capable of doing something like this. I was having that feeling of, oh, these people are so much better than me. How do I get to that point? Or how would I even get to that point? So when Elden Ring came out, that was, well, I had Sekiro before that on PC, but I wasn't amazing at it. So I just played it like once or twice and then moved on. But when Elden Ring came out, I was in love with the game. I saw there was a challenge from Sardosh called the Purgatory Bounty, or the RL1, Rune Level 1, All Remembrances, Glitchless Bounty.
Okay.
And I saw that. I was like, okay, I want to try it. So I set myself a personal goal of sub 3 hours, and everyone else who was like really competitive was getting it around 2 hours. So I was like, okay, I will try my best and go for that. And the last 2 days of the competition, I was able to get it. So I got like a 240 something. I don't remember the exact time, but I got like a 240 something. I was really happy. I was proud of that. And then Dist decided to have another bounty, and it was a region locked All Remembrances with glitches. So I tried that too, and I got in the top 15 for that. So I was like, okay, I'm learning. So then I started doing leaderboard runs for any percent glitchless. And took a while, took a few months, but I got to 3rd place with the Serpent Hunter route.
Nice.
And Yeah, that's pretty much my intro to speedrunning.
What is it about Elden Ring that makes it your favorite or top one?
I would say the combat. So when I first played it, I was like, this is I'm not used to this. It took me, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours to beat Market the first time because of all the delayed attacks. I was not used to it.
Same.
But once I started understanding, oh, there's some enemies that they're just gonna wait to attack, and then that means you can punish them while they do that. So then I started learning how to be close to them, not really distance myself and just like dodge into them. And everything started playing a lot more smoothly. I also enjoyed the fact that it was open world and you could just go wherever you wanted. If you wanted to just take a little detour, go towards a catacomb or a cave, and then go and do that, and then come back to like the main path. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I remember having a similar experience going from. So I played the previous Souls, then going into Elden Ring. The delayed attack on enemies caught me out more than I'd like to admit, and the input reading, which took me way too long to get used to with certain enemies.
Yeah, the input reading still gets me.
I remember the first experience like doing a Crucible night and somehow not learning, like he's whacking me every time I try to heal like for the first couple of goes. It's funny.
Yeah, oh man, I think the Crucible night was the first experience with parrying, and I didn't know there were things called small shields. So I was using the vagabond like medium shield the whole time trying to parry him, and it was like, man, this game is really hard. I can't get any parries. And then it finally, I don't know what happened. I might have beaten the game and watched somebody do it with a small shield. I'm like, how are they just doing this without any problem?
Yeah.
And then I learned.
Yeah, for people who don't know, and I might be I can't remember the word. Not saying this right, but I believe with the small shields up to medium, they have a lowering amount of parry frames. So with the small shield, like the buckler,
exactly,
you've got a greater time, quote unquote, in order to get that parry off. That's why it's so much easier.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. So that was the problem.
Speaking of the open world aspect, does that make it trickier, I guess more interesting to route a run, but also like with so many options, how do you go about that aspect of routing an open world game?
Yeah, so I guess I would say it makes it more of a challenge because there are more options that you can find, which makes it exciting because it's not like you find one thing and that's always it. The only thing that would change, in a glitchless route would, in say Dark Souls 3 or Dark Souls 1, would potentially be finding a shortcut that is not considered a glitch, but it's more like a skip through an area in like a different direction. You could also potentially you can find a different route itself, but I think with Elden Ring, what's interesting is that it's open world. There's many different ways to get to the middle of the game, the Altus Plateau. But when you get towards the end, it turns into like a boss rush, especially for any percent glitchless. So that part is just, you kill things as fast as you can. But the beginning and the middle of the run, there are so many different directions you can take, and it's really fun to explore those.
I think it's the same with the speedrun route as well as the hitless route, of course, with the speedrun route being a lot quicker. There is normally a large amount of setup. That's normally the great big split at the front of runs for these things. Become like a glass cannon kind of thing.
That's one thing that I've always tried, at least when I got into the hitless scene and the speedrunning scene, was I tried to minimize the setup as much as possible and tried to share that information with everybody. Like, you guys don't need to do an hour 15 minutes of setup for this game. Please just gather these stones and you'll be ready in 30 minutes. But sometimes the word spreads. Sometimes it's like you just do your own thing and accept that other people do it differently.
It wasn't just on the hitless runs, which we'll probably go into a bit more in depth later on, is that it's not just hitless runs, but like fastest hitless run or hitless speed run, like mixing the two. Don't want to be spending so much time. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time on my Elden Ring, but I think you know what I mean. Trying to mix the two.
I do.
So we've talked only about Glitchless, and as far as I'm aware, at least on speedrun.com, the runs you've completed are all glitchless. I'm assuming that's an intentional thing just to stick with that category, and is there a reason for that?
Yeah, so I guess I would say that I've had experience with both, especially at the beginning of my speedrunning career. And the glitches side, I think, is more difficult.
Okay.
Because, well, I mean, the glitches themselves sometimes are really tough to execute. And I'm still, at least I've been speedrunning for a couple of years now. But when I started, it was all new to me, so I kind of latched on to something that I was doing better at, which was the glitchless side. It also, well, it wasn't a shorter run, but what kind of happened was the route for the glitches speed runs, they kind of all gravitated towards chainsaw glitch. And if people don't know what the chainsaw glitch is, essentially you do this move swap where you switch your one weapon to another. Or yeah, you switch your one weapon to another, happen to be Serpent Hunter. And you do it when you're in like a stance, or you do it during a back step and like open the menu and do a quick swap. And when that happens, the Serpent Hunter takes the default Ash of War that's categorized as like item number 0 or item number 1 for weapons in the dictionary, and that weapon happens to be the Giza's Wheel.
Okay.
And Giza's Wheel spins, continuously spins. There's another weapon in Bloodborne that does the exact same thing.
Whirligig.
Yeah, the Whirligig, exactly. So what happens is that Ash of War transfers to Serpent Hunter. And Serpent Hunter has a special behavior when you're in Rikard's arena where it shoots the air at him, right?
Yep.
So instead of, just using the chainsaw like type of movement really close by, it turns into like invisible air gusts like 1,000 times a second. So it just turned into essentially, can you pull the glitch off as quickly as you can? And then can you aim it as well as you can at a boss?
Yeah.
Because they just die in 2 seconds. So I was like, I wasn't really interested in something like that.
Yeah.
And I think other runners were also feeling the same.
I don't have any recollection of seeing anything like that. It sounds hilarious, and it's going to be something I'm going to be looking up on a video when this is done.
Yeah, if you look up, I think Catalyst still has the record for all remembrances. It's like an hour or something like that, which is like 40 something minutes faster than the glitchless record. You'll see why it's that much faster.
The only one that I remember, which I think was like the first few months, was the zipline glitch, which made it so you could finish the game in like 5 minutes or something like that. So I remember Dis doing a couple of
let's see, with the zip side, I kind of accepted that my PC just wasn't able to do it. I tried zipping and it wasn't able to do it. It's like a hardware dependency.
Oh, okay.
So some people just didn't have the option to run that. Now with a patch that one of the community members in Soul Speedruns made, where it's like an FPS fix where it like locks your FPS to a certain value, everybody can pretty much do the zips, I believe, because of that. As long as your computer can run it at that specific FPS, then it should work. So I don't know, maybe in the future I'll try it, but it's more for that kind of stuff. I think it's more fun to watch the spectacle than to experience it on your own.
And just as a visual for people, the zipline glitch, I never did it myself, I just saw it in videos, is some sort of way to set it up, and it causes the character to just get launched across the map, like in straight line, and through a series of them, I think it was, you can finish Elden Ring, the biggest Fromsoftware games, in under 5 minutes, or whatever the record ended up being.
Yeah, it's below 4 minutes now. I think it's 3:58, which is really impressive that people are able to do that. But yeah, it's just zipping from the very beginning all the way to the end in 4 minutes with just launching yourself. Yeah, it's really cool to watch.
I'd love to be like in a meeting at like Fromsoftware just for them to the devs going, they did what? They found what?
Yeah, I don't know what the devs think. Sometimes we think that they do not like us because whenever patches come out, there's always hidden speedrun tricks or skips that are taken out.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, well, you guys didn't like that one, so we'll just try to find another way of doing the same thing, but in a different place, or in the same place, different way.
Yeah, it shows
It's always a battle.
Yeah, they're keeping an eye on in a certain way, but normally to get rid of stuff.
Yeah, I don't understand why they have some problems with some of the glitches or skips that we did, because the casual experience would not. It would be hard for some of the skips to be executed by during a casual playthrough.
Yeah,
it's like I don't think it would diminish the experience at all either. So it's like, why did you take it out of the game?
yeah. A lot of these take setup and actual proper focused intent to do them, not something likely you could do in a casual. This is like people who hunt these sorts of glitches that find these out.
Yeah, exactly.
How is that process of going across patches? Because I did a little bit of speedrunning in Sekiro a while back, which didn't really get involved in that patches stuff, but although there was a little bit with multiple draw, but how is it in something like Elden Ring, which I know has had big patch, like leaderboard destroying patches? How is it to then go back? Do you have to reroute from scratch, or is it, okay, we'll look at the same route, but just see, okay, what's changed? Do we need to slightly alter there? Is it fresh slate normally, or just adapt to what's previously been done?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that it depends on what the patch does. So, for example, they patched this capital skip where you just jumped. Many people may see the way that we do it now, where you like jump off this roof and then punch and turn onto a ledge below you, and then jump onto the dome at the bottom, called the rampart skip or the Langdale skip. And there was an original way of doing it where you just jump on the right side and land on a ledge, a very small ledge corner of the building, and then just roll to the dome and you're safe. And it's really simple. But from what I heard, the PvP community, and maybe they were also targeting the speedrunning community, I'm not sure, but the PvP community was using that to trick people in where they were located on the map, and they were able to just instantly attack people from like change height distance because of that skip, or height location because of that skip. So that might have been why they took it away, I'm not sure. But anyway, because of that, we had to find a way to get down from the from the start of the capital. And there's obviously a really nice easy way of just going to the left and going downstairs and then jumping on the roofs and stuff. But that's not fast enough. So there are glitch hunters or skip hunters, and we just post in the community feed if anything's found. So I think it was the Blade Runner who found a version of a new Langdale skip, and that was just iterated on until we came to what we have now. So that's just one example. They've also patched like other skips, and then we are either able to find something like Celia, the Celia skip up the branch. There used to be an even easier branch, but they completely removed it.
Oh, the whole branch.
Ordina's skip. Yeah, the whole entire branch, like the whole entire branch of the tree, they removed it.
Okay, so that's not subtle
and
at all then.
We just went up a different branch. That's a bit harder to do, but once you practice it, it's not too bad. And then for Ordina's skip, we used to climb these rocks on the left side and then jump up to the ledge and go to the teleporter. So they removed those rocks. So we found a way to jump on the right side over the collision box of the gate, the seal that blocks the teleporter that is for some reason just active all the time. So we just try to use that to our advantage. But when there's patches that deal with balancing, such as how weapons do, like how strong weapons are, how fast they are, how strong or how effective the critical attacks, the riposte, and the backstabs are, which was patch 1.10, then you have to think, okay, is there a better weapon? Is there a better way of fighting enemies? Is this patch faster than the one we previously had? They took away like the crouch sprinting regeneration that we used to use to just keep our stamina up all the time during boss fights and running sections. So when that was taken away, we had to think, okay, are we losing too much time because that's gone compared to the past runs? Like, will we get a faster time if we use the current patch or if we'll use the old patch? So we have to weigh those options and see which route is faster. And sometimes it does happen that the old patch is faster, and then eventually the current patch is faster. And when current patch is faster, that feels good because then console runners can run current patch and run the same exact route. And you don't have to down patch your game as well, which isn't too bad of an experience. It just takes time. That's all.
And unless there's an FPS, something about the FPS that affects the gameplay, I believe it's in-game time, so I'm guessing both PC and consoles are comparable. Is that right?
Well, we have a plugin for Live Split that modifies the in-game time where you take away black screens, loading screens don't count. And because of that, and also another patch came in around the DLC when the DLC was released, when that essentially fixes the in-game timer based on your FPS. So if your FPS is lower than 60, then your clock is going to be running slower than somebody who's always 60. So they fix that to where the in-game time runs the same amount of time based on the frames. So the PC players have an advantage. So all the PC times are faster, which is why PC and console are split on the leaderboard, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm stuck between two. I was going to go into the DLC, but I want to leave that for just a sec and just stick with quote-unquote base game speedruns. Specifically, how do you approach shaving seconds off a run in terms of getting to a world level record speedrun?
Okay. So it's weird I could answer this question. I never thought I would be able to do this. It's just iteration after iteration, practice after practice. And when you start a route, you kind of you celebrate the little accomplishments or the big time save that you have. And your run can go instantly from like a 1 hour 25 minute 80% to an hour 10 minute just because you died less and you did the same exact route. Your lines in terms of like pathing isn't as clean as it can be, like as like a world record run can be. But you're still learning and it's getting a faster time and you're feeling good about it. But then you start getting to a wall where, say, you are now executing, like you're now surviving, but you're not surviving as quickly as others. So you have to think, okay, what are they doing differently than me? So one way you can do that, which I did end up doing when I got towards like the top 3, was run against somebody else's splits. And then you can see where are you slower than the other person, and you can see why. So there was a section that was costing me some time. There were a couple sections compared to the runner Chemist. And he was doing birds, like the area after Godskin Duo of Farum Azula, all the way to the fog gate of Malekith, which included bird skip. He was doing that like a few seconds faster than me, and I didn't know why. So I had to look at his run and make sure and like compare the two, and he showed me that you can do bird skip while you're sprinting. Like you can sprint across the building on the side of the building while you sprint the whole entire time. And because of that, that cut time. He did some other bow cancels, I think, where you jump and then two-hand the bow, land, and when you land, you don't have any like landing animation. You just keep going.
Yep.
And if you don't do that, you have a fall animation where your character lands, like crouches a little, like, you know,
recovers.
Recovers a little bit and then starts going. So when you take that away, you save time.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another section in Stormvale where, like, the running section of Stormvale that was also a few seconds faster. And I was like, I don't know how he's doing this. But it was just a slight difference in pathing and a different way of avoiding the ballistas at the beginning. And then I was able to shave some more time off. And yeah, that's kind of one way of doing it. You can also I watch a lot of the runners when they're learning, and you can kind of pick up on some of the techniques that other people do for either pathing or just boss fights themselves. So the boss fights, usually that's where you die. Sometimes skips and stuff can make you die as well, or make you lose a lot of time, but it's mostly the boss fights that cause the big chunk of time difference.
Yep.
So you just got to try to learn the fastest punishes, rinse and repeat, learn, because essentially in any percent glitchless, all the fights are pretty much scripted. With at once was the Serpent Hunter, once was earlier the Bloodhound's Fang, which is now Death's Poker, but I haven't tried the Death's Poker route yet. But Bloodhound's Fang was kind of I'm very proud of that route that we ended up developing with Distortion.
Yeah, I think Bloodhound Fang's been crushing it since the very start, really. I know there's been other things that have been tried and tested, but it's the one that sort of stuck around.
What happened, I can go into this.
Sure, let's go.
What happened was the speedrun scene was dominated by Serpent Hunter. And casually speaking, Bloodhound's Fang was on the internet everywhere. Like, oh, this is the weapon you got to pick up and use. And I actually didn't pick it up and use it in my first playthroughs. So when I was looking at the run, the speed run, I was like, there's got to be a way to do this faster, because it doesn't feel like the pathing is right. So I think what happened was Distortion was looking into the speedrun again for any percent glitchless, and he started looking into the Iron Balls route because it was a major patch that improved the power and the speed of those weapons. And everyone loves the Iron Balls now.
It's so strong.
and Starfist. Yeah, very, very strong. So he was like, I wonder if you can get a run that's fast with those. So he started experimenting different pathings to get to Altus. And because of that, it sparked an idea of mine. There was a rule change when All Remembrances Glitchless was becoming popular that allowed Stake of America skips. And one of the Stake of America skips that is really important for all of these runs is the Star Scourge Radon Stake America skip, where you completely bypass the need to activate the festival at Jaren in Redmane Castle, and you just go straight to the teleporter from the stake.
So just a quick one. So my understanding of America's stake or skip is launching yourself off the nearest cliff nearest Stake America, quitting out, and you'll appear, or if you die in proximity to that Stake America, you'll appear then, because of that's how it works. But that allows you to skip certain areas or sections or running bits.
Yeah, so sometimes you have to quit out, such as the Snowfield one, at least the current one. If you don't do the jump right, you have to quit out for it to work. But for the Radon Stake America skip, you jump off the cliff and just fall to your death. And then because you're in the zone of the Stake America, it picks you up and it asks, do you want to spawn there? So yeah, when that was allowed, and I made sure to ask if that was allowed essentially Radon became a very fast shard bearer, somebody who carries a great rune to get access to the capital. And previously, the fastest two that were known were Godric and Rykard.
Yep. Okay.
And Godric was still fast, but Rykard's kind of slow. You have to kill Godskin Noble in the glitchless route, and then you have to run to Rykard, and then you have to kill him with the Serpent Hunter, which you have to upgrade. And that takes time. If you're not using the weapon, it takes more time than if you are using the weapon. So it kind of, because of that, the route was dominated by Serpent Hunter for like over a year. About a year, Serpent Hunter was king of any percent glitchless. And with the Stake America change, I discovered that if you use the Deathless medallions to get access to Altus, instead of going through Volcano Manor and going to the killing the abductor, the Virgin Abductor duo to get access to Altus, in combination with not fighting Rykard, there was, well, it appeared to be more of the time save than I expected, but I expected about 2 minutes of time save, 2.5 minutes of time save. And that was a huge find, because it completely opened up so many options of what can we do to make this run faster. And it sparked the idea of, okay, which weapons are we looking at now?
Yep.
Is Iron Balls a good contender? No, not really. It's a smithing weapon, and you have to gather the stones, and gathering the stones takes a lot of time compared to the 10 stones that you need for the Somber route.
Yep.
Or the 9. You could just get 9 versus like the 96 that you need for smithing. So it was like, that's probably not going to be the best. So we were searching for a Somber weapon, and that happened to be, I was originally looking at Stormhawk Axe because you can get it on the way to Godric.
Yep.
But then we zeroed in on Bloodhound's Fang, which is also really close to the pathing that you can take towards Dectus, where instead of going from, which the typical route was Stormhill Shack, going through, getting Golden Vow, the Strength tier, potentially Exalted Flesh along the way, getting the Sleep Pot recipe, going to the Third Church towards the Physic, and then from there going to Fort Height, which is like this really long roundabout way of going to that place. We discovered that you can just go from First Step and go to, like, through Aguil Lake to Aguil Lake South, and then cut, and there's a Spirit Spring to bring you to Fort Height from there.
So instead of doing like the curve, it's gone just a straight line now, kind of thing.
It's pretty straight. It's not completely straight, because there's this merchant that sells sleep arrows that you need to get for the Godskin duo fight, or else you have fun.
Yeah.
Which the Des Poker Out doesn't use those.
God,
it's kind of crazy.
That sounds horrendous in RNG sense.
they can get like the same time for the fight. It is a messy RNG situation. Yeah, that's kind of what the glitchless runs tend to turn into when they get really optimized. But yeah, we found the Dectus medallion pathing, and it completely changed the route from Serpent Hunter to what is, and I guess now was, Bloodhound's Fang as the king of the 80% glitchless runs.
Is it like an overnight switch as soon as something or a run's been submitted or discovered, or when people see, oh, this can actually be faster, do all the runners sort of change at once, or do some still carry on with what has been working?
Well, when there's a big change, like that huge change in the route from going into Volcano Manor versus collecting Dectus medallions and going into Altus, when people see that, and maybe they didn't like the previous route of Serpent Hunter, oh, it's a boring weapon, oh, it's, I don't want to fight Rykard, oh, it's just charge R2 spam everywhere.
Yep.
I don't want to do that. They might see the new route and be like, ooh, this excites me. This is different. I would like to try that. And then more people start to try things, and then more people start to discover things, and then the route gets better, and then the route gets more fun. And then the route gets terrible because people find really terrible things for the route, but are better.
Yeah.
And then so the whole discovery phase and the how can we make things better phase tends to bring people in, and then when it turns into the okay, let's grind for a record, that's when people kind of gravitate away from the run sometimes, because they don't want to put in the as much time and effort as other runners do that go for the records.
I'm just having like a visual thought of like two levels, one that's like saying enjoyment and the other's like time save, and at the start all the stuff's in the enjoyment because you're learning like all these things to save so much time, and as you approach these like more optimized things, it like that lowers because the time save optimizations are so precise, or in Godskin duo with this Death's Poker seems so, or at least to me, have it just as a casual player, the RNG of those two going around just like scares me just playing normally, never mind relying on them to work for you. Perhaps an hour in, or well, less than 90%, 40 minutes in to a run that you might be going at a good pace and suddenly they're not playing ball.
Yeah, for sure. With Death's Poker, it's definitely a learning curve. It's completely different than what you did with Serpent Hunter, what you did with Bloodhound's Fang. And you have to learn how to play differently, which can be exciting, but it can also be very frustrating. And some people think that the way that you play with Death's Poker and the fact that if you get 9 ticks of the fire damage versus 10 or 8, then your fight's going to be completely different, and you might miss a phase skip, or might just miss killing the boss in one cycle, and it can be frustrating because like it was off by 0.1 seconds, but I lost the fight because I lost the time because I guess didn't press the button quick enough, or the boss did an attack that was different and made me react differently. And so it can be frustrating in that respect. But when a run starts becoming created, like a new one, you have to start developing new strategies, new boss fights and all that. So immediately when the Deathless medallion route was found, we started hunting. We started like trying to like we were looking for the weapon. We settled on Bloodhound's Fame, but then once we did, we had to find out, okay, is it actually better than the current route? So we had to start testing different boss fights, like going into Fire Giant and rinse and repeat. I think I was there for, I don't know, 6 hours or so on one stream, where like other runners were there too, and we were just trying to figure out the best way to dagger and get a really quick phase 1 into a phase 2 kill. And it went through iteration after iteration. We were doing like some charge R2 setup with the charge tiers and stuff, and then eventually we finally found this weapon art, like this slick weapon art hit on the foot that was able to do enough damage. Because the first strat we found was like we had enough damage, but it was really, really hard to execute. And then it just was, you develop strats, and then you find like, okay, they're really hard to do, and then you try to find easier ways of doing them, and that kind of had to happen for every single boss in the run. So I worked on that a lot. Dist worked on that a lot. Blanks, Mitch Riz, we all worked on that a lot to get to where the run is now. And then of course other runners who decided to join in found other changes that made the route even better.
Which part, I mean, there's different aspects to enjoy of each one, but the basic question is, which part do you enjoy more, the running and getting the records, or all this rooting and exploring and working out, optimizing?
Yeah. So I say this on stream all the time. I enjoy the routing. The routing is so much fun. That's probably why I gravitated towards Hitless as well, because the routing's kind of free, like free roam. You can do whatever you want in Hitless, as long as you don't get hit, and you can make it as fun as you want. You can make it as fast as you want. And for speed runs, you want to try to make it as fast as you can, but you might want to experiment and see, okay, is there another weapon that might be just as good? So for example, I know we weren't going to go into the DLC, but this is a pretty good example to describe this. There was a bounty for the DLC percent, or what's now called as the defeat consort percent on the leaderboards. And it was a bounty by Amazing Chest. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try something different. We're going to see how it goes. And if it's not that fast, maybe we'll switch to what the meta becomes. But if it's pretty fast, let's just keep going and see how well we can do. So I chose Reduvia as the weapon to get for the DLC because there's a lot of health on those bosses and they're all weak to bleed.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, because of that, let's just use status. Let's use status and let's try something different with a different weapon. Might take a little bit longer to get than Bloodhound's Fang, but it bleeds more and it's faster, so bleeds will happen quicker. So maybe this will work. So we did a previous bounty, or I hosted a previous bounty called DLC Unlock percent that kind of found that the Great Stars was the fastest way to get to the DLC. So we used that at the beginning, and then we incorporated Reduvia in for the Moog fight as well as all of the DLC. But then Reduvia doesn't have very good poise damage, where you can stagger the boss quickly with other weapons. With Reduvia, not so much. So I also decided to incorporate Great Stars into the mix to stagger some bosses. And eventually it turned into a route that was sub 1 hour and 10 minutes, which was around the time that Bloodhound's Fang route that other people were running was at. So I was like, okay, let's keep going. Let's see if we can win this. And we ended up getting third place in that competition with a completely different route than the top two, which were Bloodhound's Fang. So that was really cool. So because of that, that's one reason that I like the routing, because it can be different and you can kind of maybe even see that there's another route like Bloodhound's Fang that is different from the meta, and you can it might even be better, right? So you got to experiment, you got to try these things out and see if they work. If they don't, it's okay. You spent time, maybe you learned some things along the way. Maybe you learned a different way to fight a boss. Maybe you learned a different technique, a different pathing that you can use for future runs. So it all adds up and it all comes together in the end.
I was just going to say what you said earlier about when we were talking about the looking at other runs and what other runners do, did remind me of like ghosts in like time trials, whether that be in racing games.
Man, I want that in Elden Ring so bad. I've talked about that too many times. Just having a ghost of like the world record run, just all the positions saved, having a ghost of it, and then just running against it. I think that'd be cool. Be much like Trackmania or any of those time trial games that are out there. And yeah, that would be really sweet to experience.
We've got seamless co-op, so it can't be a million miles away.
That's a good point. It probably just takes somebody to do it.
Yeah, so who's willing to
at this point.
put
We
the right
have
bounty on.
the ability. We just haven't done it yet, I think. Yeah.
I mean, just when you get into those top 10, top 5, top 3 times, and from runs or your summer best, which to people who don't do speedrun is like the best times you've done on each split, they add up at the bottom and says if you did as perfectly as you've done previously in each split, you could do this time, which can be minutes essentially past your PB. But when you're in that position of knowing I can do world record, or if you've already got the world record, I can beat this PB, what constitutes a reset point? What for you is, okay, I need to reset?
Yeah. So when you die, usually that means you need a reset. Other than that, though, sometimes you get some runs and you get unlucky RNG, or you may have missed a skip, or your pathing just is a little bit slower because you're pressing buttons slower and your mind's not connecting to your hands just as well as it was in the previous run or your best run. which happens, you know, it happens all the time. I have runs where I'm ahead by 10 seconds compared to my PB, and then the next run I'm behind by 5 seconds compared to my PB. Like it's very there's a bit of variance in it. But what one metric that I use, which I try to make sure that my sum of best is as accurate as it can be in terms of like what I've done, because sometimes you can switch your route and then accidentally have a gold time, a best time of a split that is not indicative of what you can actually do in the run. So then it messes up your sum of best. So I try to clean that as much as possible to get the most accurate sum of best, so that when I look at the best possible time in the scenarios of like top 3 or top 5, and if my best possible time gets above my current best run, my personal best, sometimes that's when I'm like, okay, yeah, the run's dead. I can't do this. My sum of best has an incredible Elden Beast. My sum of best has this amazing Letta fight in the DLC, like stuff like that. It's like, okay, I can't keep up with the PB. I can't do better than that. So I'm just gonna stop here. So that typically happens when you have a lot of runs under your belt, where like attempt number is in the few hundreds to maybe a couple, like in the thousands. And you're like, okay, yeah, I've done this many times. I know that if I keep going, I might tie my PB with like all these golds, but if I mess up one more time, you know, that's it. The run's dead. So that's happened many times in 80% glitchless, where my personal best was a really good time, like say sub 57 minutes, or like just above 57 minutes. I'm like, okay, I need to get sub 57. And you keep running, and then you get to Fire Giant and you make a mistake, and then you notice your best possible time is now like 57:15, and your PB is like 57:17. It's like, okay, I don't know if this run can really continue for an improvement, but you can still choose to finish it in the end, because more reps means more practice, which means you can potentially get more consistent at things. So sometimes finishing runs, even though they're kind of dead, is still a good idea.
Yeah, I'm speaking to a few runners about that, both on Hitless and Speedrunning side, in terms of finishing runs, that it can be the case of runners who are in the position where they can do well at a speedrun, or they know they can get that Hitless run, and because let's say Hitless is probably the easiest example of that. They're on a one-hit PB, they know they can do it if all the stars aligned. But they spend so much time resetting the first 6 out of 10 splits that when eventually they do get to the last few, although they may know the splits very well, just the back-to-back and the pressure can be sometimes fresh because they haven't done that section for so long, because they've known they can quote-unquote get the run.
Yep. I've had that happen to me, where like you're resetting early in hitless runs, and then when you get towards the end, you're like, wait, how did I do this strat again? And you're like on a personal best, like one hit or zero, like you may get the run, and then you get to that point, you're like, wait, what was my strat again? It happens. But yeah, for hitless runs, definitely finishing the run and just improving and getting that consistency down is really important. Even if you get the one hit pretty early on, you can just keep going. But if you have that one hit PB and you get hit early, you do want to reset. It's just a mental thing. Like, why would I continue this? It's not better. But yeah, I've had many one hit PBs in my day for hitless runs.
Yeah, it's a very weird experience when I've had it for a few times, just doing it for practice. You get hit near the start, just like, oh, I probably wouldn't get it today. I'm feeling a bit off anyway. Get to the end, you've done the rest hitless, and then your immediate thought is, oh, we should have reset. We could have.
Yep, exactly. It's like, oh, I took a hit in Fort Faroth, like the back got me poisoned, but I'm just gonna keep going. Oh my god, I would have gotten the run if I got that part right. Are you kidding me? And it's like, does that really count? Can we change the rule on poison procs, guys? You go into the forum like, hey, can we change this? I just got the run, but other than this, please, can you make an exception for me?
I had quite a few times with Gyobu and Sekiro when I used to do those runs a long time ago, because I found him very awkward.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Gyobu,
pain-
for sure.
painful.
Can end runs, yeah.
Right, we've skirted around it enough, I think. DLC. I think I'll probably just start.
All right.
I think I'll probably just start with a very basic question in what was your thoughts about it, just from, I guess, a casual player perspective, like going into it.
So I did something a little different compared to a typical casual first playthrough.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to make it a bit challenging, and I went for a +0 run. I don't know why.
I'm hoping this doesn't include like
Um,
avoiding the skidoo fragments or shadow fragments.
It did on the first day, not the second, but it did on the first day.
Okay.
And the first boss I fought was the Black Jail Knight, or
Yep.
no, the Knight of the
Oh yeah, they changed it, didn't they?
Solitary Jail.
Yeah.
Now I think is the name of it. That was the first guy I encountered, and I was there for, I think it was like an hour and a half, and it was an NPC fight, and
Yeah.
I really despise NPC fights. So the first hour and a half, I'm like, dude, this DLC sucks. You make it through, you finally get past that stuff, and then you start exploring the areas, and it's really beautiful. I love the opening of the DLC. They do a really good job of that. They did it with Dark Souls 3 where you enter Lothric. They did it with Limgrave where you open the door and it's just this amazing view and amazing landscape ahead of you. And it's like that was one of the first games, at least that was like one of the first times Fromsoftware was like, oh, you see that, you can go there. Right? I mean, Dark Souls 3 kind of had that too, but it was more like you can go there everywhere around you.
Yeah.
Right? It's just so open. And they kind of had that with the DLC as well. You get out of this little cave and you're like, whoa, there's this giant area. And then you find out it's not as big as the base game, but it's still very large for a DLC. Definitely could have been its own game on its own.
Yeah. Especially when you consider like the 3D traversal of it and the way you're going up and down to reach new areas like hitting Karos.
Yeah, that was kind of new, right? And that was pretty fun. It was also really frustrating because you had to find the map fragments in order to know where you are on the map. And it took me a long time to find a couple of them because they're just in some really weird places. And they designed the map in a very smart way, at least for people to get tricked of where the map fragments are. So you like head towards this one like towards where you see the map fragment icon on the map, and you head towards there, and then you hit a dead end. You're like, okay, I can't get there. How do I get there? And then eventually you might unlock it, but through this completely convoluted way of, oh, you actually had to get to Skadoo Altus, then you have to find this path underneath this like this tunnel, and then you go to the swamp area, and then you actually turn a left, and then you keep going, and then oh boom, there's the fragment. It's like I didn't even notice that was there. Yeah, it was so hidden. And that happened to me a lot with the DLC. I got lost a lot, especially Storehouse in Shadowkeep. I think I was there for a few hours just trying to climb it, and I think I came to the same place like 8 or 10 times. Like, I think I've been here before. Where am I? The chat's just laughing at me, and it's just, yeah. In terms of the exploration part, it was fun. It was a bit frustrating because sometimes I just didn't know where I was going. But that's sometimes exciting. It's like you don't know where you're going, and there could be something new along the way that you've never experienced.
Yeah, they went next level with Shadowkeep. I think I was doing the challenge thing with it, and there's like 7 or 8 exits to the place, depending on like what you constitute.
There were like the 2 or 3 different ways of getting, or 2 ways of getting into Shadowkeep kind of tricked me. I went through the back section first, I think. I don't think I fought Hippo first. I went through the back section, and it was so, it was kind of like it was a maze a bit. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of like the fighting and the boss fights and stuff, so I was doing +0. So every single boss that I encountered was essentially a grind where I was learning the move set, and I had a bunch of health. Like it was +0, but I could upgrade. So I was like learning, okay, these enemies have a lot of health. Skadoo fragments help you a bit, in terms of like defense, they help you a lot.
Yeah.
But in terms of attack with a +0 weapon, they don't really help that much. But I learned that status was really important on these bosses, so I started using Rod, I used Bleed, I used Frost, I was using Poison, all the stuff that I had. Ansper Rapier was really important. Great Stars ended up being fun with like a Frost and Bleed kind of build to it. And yeah, I just went to an area, got to the boss. Dancing Lion took, I don't know, 6 hours. Finally killed it. Moved on to the next area. Okay, we're at Rolana. Okay, 6.5 hours. All right, moving on. Just keep on doing that.
I mean, 6.5 hours for Rolana is pretty good actually at +0. I struggled a lot with Rolana.
Oh man, Rolana was a fun fight though. The first time oh man, she was really fun to fight because she just never stopped.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, can you? At one point, I was like, okay, can you chill? But then once you figure her out, you're like, okay, this is a really fun loop of fighting her. I also didn't parry her. I was just dodging all the attacks too. I didn't really know you could parry most of the bosses in the DLC. But yeah, that's kind of how the experience went. And then I hit some walls where I guess Rolana was kind of a wall with like the 6.5 hours. Bale was also about that time. But then I hit Consort Radon. And well, the Letta fight was also interesting. I was lucky. I think it was 3v3. It wasn't like the crazy 5v3 or 5v2 that some people have. Because I went through some of the quest lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hit Consort Radon, and man, that was a weekend. It was about 21 hours, I think, in game time of playing to kill him for the first time. But it was a fantastic release of emotions afterwards, because it's like, oh my god, I'm done. I beat the DLC. It just took so long. Okay. But because of that, I was able to savor like every moment in the DLC. Instead of like killing something with something really, really strong, I was able to kind of learn the boss and appreciate the moveset, or get really frustrated at the moveset and be like, I don't want to fight this guy ever again.
This is such a BS frame trapping move on the double slash.
Yup. Oh yeah, the cross slash. Yeah, when I got to that point, everyone's like, good luck. I got it first try. When he did it the first time to me, I got the dodge first try, and they're like, how the hell did you do that? And I was like, this is easy. Simple. And then I missed it like 15 times later. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. That was beginner's luck. I don't know what happened there.
I think it's mad that people managed to still work out how to do like Hitless runs even before the patch, like hugging the right side or rolling at a certain angle, even with how bad at least I found that move.
Yeah, that's crazy how adaptive all these players are. And I kind of picked that up too when I was learning the fight. I think I might have watched somebody doing the fight. Might have been on ball where he was dodging and it was like rotating around Radon. I'm like, oh, that's a clever way of doing that. So I picked that up and started doing it too, and I would get farther and farther in the boss fight until eventually beating it.
When you were talking about the map fragments, I was just getting flashbacks because 4/5 of my first playthrough, I was, well, obviously not at the very start because I didn't know what was going on, but like, let's say the middle part of the playthrough, I was going, what is this darkened section on the map and how come I can get so close to this map fragment but can't get it for the...
Yep, exactly.
the woods.
That happened to me too. Yeah, the woods, and then also the Rau ruins.
Oh yeah.
Where like the two-handed talisman is located. I couldn't find that area for the life of me. So that was, and the Abyssal Woods. It took me, I think I started a stream and I was like, okay, we're gonna find this area. And then eventually I was able to discover it, but I had to get a hint from chat of like, where am I missing? Because I swear I scoured the whole entire map looking for this like way to get access to this place.
I think one of the things that I had to get a hint on just reminded me, and I'm just wondering who found it out first of all. Was Saint Trina, where you have to intentionally die like 3 or 5 times in a row in order to get dialogue?
I don't know. I don't know who did that. Word just got around. I think I try to be as blind as possible with the DLC and like try to experience it. But you either watch somebody or you read something, or like there's a headline that's on your news page that just spoils something for you. And that might have been one of the things where it was like, okay, I died. Oh wait, you can talk to her again. Oh wait, you can talk to her again.
Yeah,
You just keep doing it. It's like I don't know. People are just so inquisitive and they just wanna figure things out. So they just try different things. And sometimes that's a whole different experience.
So going from the casual to now the categories, I guess that's the best way to put it. So we've spoke a little bit about the DLC percent or the defeat console as it is now, but also I feel it's relatively recent. This Two Gods character, in terms, it's only been the last 2 to 3 months, if not wrong. At least it's gotten to more popular.
On the leaderboard, it's been maybe over a month.
Okay, even sooner.
But I think I don't know if this is right, but the first person that I saw doing the Two Gods speedrun was Mitriz, and he was interested in it because it had both the any percent and the DLC in the run. So it looked like an exciting category, but it wasn't official and not many people were running it. But he was doing a good job with coming up with the route, getting the time down, making it look like it would be a pretty fun and enjoyable run. And then eventually in the Discord, we the moderators decided that Two Gods is a good category to add to the speedrun.com list. So it got added, and then there weren't any runs there, and we just essentially there was one good run by Uros. I mean, Mitch had good runs as well, and before that, people were doing like this refund percent, where at first the refund percent was any percent, and people would do that in less than 2 hours, and it wasn't like super impressive. I didn't think it was super impressive because I was speedrunning at the time. I was like, I can do that in an hour.
Good YouTube titles though. I think that's where I came a lot from with different games.
YouTube titles, yeah, exactly. So, but it was like, well, it's not super impressive feat. But then they added people were starting to add the DLC into it. I was like, okay, can you beat that in under 2 hours? And it's like, okay, now we're talking. This is real time in terms of 2 hours. Yeah, it can be really challenging, especially if you die, then you might be in trouble. So that was really cool to watch people do that. Mitriz was one of the ones that was able to do it. I think Lil Aggie did it as well, Catalyst. And for Catalyst, I mean, he spent a lot of time developing a route for it and honing it down and getting it consistent so he could do it.
And potentially money as well if he got a new game for each attempt.
Exactly, yeah. If you failed that 2 hour run, you may not get the refund, and then you lost
70, 80 quid for it, maybe
80. I think it was like $80 or $90. Yeah, $90 for because you had to do it on a new account. Yeah, new Elden Ring, new DLC, which it can get expensive. So you want to beat it as fast as you can, in as little attempts as possible. But yeah, that's kind of where it originated, and I think the popularity grew because of the refund percent. So of course, thank you to all the runners who decided to do that, because if you didn't, it may not be a category right now, and it may not be one of the runs that I really enjoyed doing.
So I want to ask 2 more things about this. One's more technical and one sort of mindset. I'll go with the technical first. In terms of some of the fights that I've seen seem to be very precise. So the examples I'm thinking of is Moog and Consort Radahn in the Two Gods. And I'm just wondering how you
Yes.
keep track of, because from a casual perspective, watching these runs, and just for listeners, these bosses are getting frost procced, they're getting bleeded, they're getting their posture set up so that they stagger at the right time, in order to avoid potentially the boss like sodding off or doing a certain attack. How do you keep track of each factor, or maybe the procs aren't, well, depend on Mo because of his phase transition. I think you know what I'm asking, even though I'm wobbling a bit. How do you keep track of these things during an RNG quote unquote fight?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a lot of this stuff stems from what you learn from practice. So during practice, you're allowed to use, I mean, you can do whatever you want in practice. You can turn on no death, you can repeat actions of move sets and learn them over and over and over. But for my practice, I tend to have like the health of the enemy and the poise of the enemy and like the status buildup of the enemy up on the screen. And then you learn how many hits does it take to get a frost proc? How long does it take to get a frost proc? If the boss stalls and does these moves where you can't hit them, do you need an extra hit to get a frost proc? How much time do you need, or how much time can be wasted before the strat breaks down and you actually do need the extra hit, which will mess up the poise of the fight, which will mess up the damage done, which will, end up making the strat moot. Like you can't do it. So that kind of stuff was just, so for Moog and Consort Radon, there's a couple of things that you have to take into consideration. One, so I'll start with Moog. The first thing for Moog is, when do you get the first in the heal? So when do you get the first thing when he says trace?
Yep.
At least in the language that I listened to in Elden Ring. And then another one is, when does he start in the heal? So he starts in the heal at 50% HP. Once you go below 50%, like 49.9999, he will start in a heal once, pretty much if he's idle. If he's not in an attack, he will start in a heal. When he starts in the heal, he gets a massive defense.
Yep.
And causes his health to be much higher than 50% because of this defense buff. And you can't really, it's hard to kill him if he does that.
Yep.
Before you stagger him there. So with Bloodhound's Fane, we found, because of how he's an endgame boss fight.
Yep.
So he has a bunch of health. He has like 20,000 health. And we're fighting him with a +6 weapon, with the Bloodhound's Fane +6. Originally, I was fighting him with a Great Stars +5 or +7, like, which is even less damage. But when I switched to the Bloodhound's Fane route, it was a +6. It's considerable amount of damage, especially like in the base game, like 80% loop. Like that's a lot of damage. It can get you everywhere up until Fire Giant. But for Moog, because of that, we found that staggering him before he does Trace is the best. So you have to know what is the damage that he reaches before Trace. I think it's actually a small amount of damage. I don't know the exact number or the percentage. I just know it from experience that it's 3 charge R2s, like 3 charge attacks, 1 light attack, and then you can throw a dagger in between, and that won't push him over. That'll stagger him.
Okay.
But if you throw 2 daggers, then you did too much damage, and he's going to do Trace, and then you're everything's messed up.
Okay.
You can salvage it if you know how to, but it can get messy. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, once he hits the 50%, you need to have a stagger at that point. And if you don't, then
runs over.
It's going to be a really long fight, because he heals from the heal.
Yep.
And then he has like 75-80% of his normal health, and he starts flying in the air.
Yep.
So he stalls a lot, and it's a really bad fight for a speed run. So you want to try to one cycle him. So you try to keep track of, when do bleeds happen. Okay, the bleed happens at the start near Trace, so we need to have another bleed happen at around the stagger point. But it has to be after the stagger, because if the bleed happens before it, then we're not going to have enough damage to kill him before he does the heal. And then we also incorporated Frost into the mix for another status proc. If people don't know this, Frost, it does a bit of damage on the proc, but everything afterwards for the next, I think it's 30 seconds, might be 25, does 20% more damage. It's a buff of 20% more damage on the boss because of that. So having Frost in this fight is really important. You can do it with just bleed, but Frost makes it more consistent. So because of that, you have to take into account those things. So you need the Frost and the bleed either at the stagger, when the stagger happens at the halfway point, or after the stagger. And we found that if you have the Frost happen before the riposte, so when he's staggered, you go up for the critical attack and it's a riposte. When it happens before that, you can do enough damage to one cycle him. So if it happens during the riposte, it can't work. At least in Defeat Consort route. I'm not sure for the Two Gods route actually, because we have more damage. But yeah, those are the couple of things I have to take into consideration. So you look at like the health and the status proc and the poise, and you learn like what are the moves that you have to do to get to that point. So this is where like scripts kind of get developed, and I really like developing scripts for bosses because it's like a puzzle. How do I get to kill the boss as efficiently as possible and as consistently as possible? So it's a puzzle for me. So I enjoy doing that. So then for Consort Radon, there were two things again that were important. One, his phase change. When he goes from phase 1 to phase 2, it's when he hits 30,000 health, or it's like about 30,000. And one thing that another runner found, Mitch Riz, I think it was Mitch Riz who found this, correct me if I'm wrong, community. But at the end of phase 1 to the start of phase 2, he tends to do that big AoE explosion. But if you stagger Consort Radon when he's about to jump up and do his T-pose holy explosion, you can riposte an iframe the big explosion. So it saves a lot of time since you're not running away from the boss.
Yeah, getting some damage off at the same time, like with the riposte as well.
Getting damage off, staying close to the boss. Yeah, it's important. But you can also block it. If you have enough health, you can block it and survive. It's kind of cool that you can just tank it. But then the fight gets really risky because you have to decide, okay, am I going to heal or am I going to keep the pressure and try to get a stagger as early as I can, so that way the script stays about the same. And when we say script, sometimes like for bosses like Consort Radon, which have a lot of variability, we're more saying like, a certain number of hits needed to get to the point that we want eventually, because he likes to stall a lot. You have to throw throwing daggers to keep the poise up, and sometimes that can mess with the fight. So that's one thing, and that's one thing that we found that can work, is to stagger him at the start of phase 2. The second thing is the big jump into the meteor slam. The meteor drop, right? So that happens towards the tail end of his health pool. It's kind of like phase 2 transition for Star Scourge Radon is earlier, but that one's like a last ditch, like I'm gonna get away from you and cause big damage. So of course we want to get rid of that because that's more time waste. He's in the air, we can't hit him. So we have to get a stagger before that happens. And with Two Gods, we have more damage, so it's a bit easier to do that than with the Defeat Consort category, the Defeat Consort route. But yeah, essentially you count the number of hits, or that each R1, each like light attack is going to do 10 poise to the boss. Then and he has 120 poise, and he recovers the poise in 6.5 seconds. So you have to hit him every 6.5 seconds. And sometimes he stalls, so you have to throw a throwing dagger, which causes the poise to reset, or like the poise recovery to reset. So you still keep the same amount of poise as it was before.
So it'd go from like like reset the counter from like it's got to 5 seconds, now it's back to 0, and that starts again with the thrown dagger. Is that right?
Yeah, with the way I see it is it's like 6.5 seconds and it counts down to 0, and then when it gets to 0, the poise starts recovering.
Okay.
But you can see it either way. It doesn't matter. So with that, you have to get 12 hits in to stagger him, at least with light attacks. But you can do charge R2s, which are about 36 poise. So that's like doing 3 light attacks or more than 3 light attacks. So you can kind of learn, okay, when he's around this part of his name tag, when the health is around this part of his name tag, he's going to want to jump. So when luckily that animation is a bit long when he's doing the jump, so you can get a nice charge R2 heavy attack in to stagger him there. And with the damage that we have, once you get the frost proc in the Two Gods run, he usually wants to jump. So you do a charge attack or do some attacks that will cause him to stagger, and then because of that, you get a bleed proc, and then you get a riposte damage, and then he's dead pretty much every time with the Two Gods route. It's really nice. So you can do that. You can also do a strat where you're keeping track of the stagger poise and you're not really focusing on the parries in the fight, because you can either do it where you try to get as many hits in as early as you can to get the frost proc and then stagger him when he's trying to jump. But I found a way that you can keep track of his poise with all the bosses that you can parry, there are 2 ways of staggering the boss. One is by hitting the number of parries to trigger a stagger, and then the second is the poise of the boss. So we tend to stagger him a lot with parries because parries have been found to be the fastest way to fight him. So you stagger him after 3 parries in a row, and they can be spread out. He can stall, and then you can parry him again, and it'll just keep track. They don't decay. So I found when you parry him in the second phase and you get him to the stagger point, if you do a charge attack and then continue the fight and parry and do a light attack, parry, do a light attack, dodge, do a light attack, it'll get to... You'll stagger him, and then you can do a bunch of hits while he's down into a riposte that'll get the freeze proc. Then you get the bleed, and then you kill him. So it's like there's a couple different ways of fighting him that we found through this trial and error in practice of watching the poise meter, watching his health, learning the status proc locations or timings. So that's kind of how we keep track of that. So, and once you do it enough, it just becomes something that you remember in the fight itself, because we can't use that stuff in actual runs, in leaderboard runs.
So I was going to ask, so during the fight itself, as well as obviously avoiding the light show that is his second phase, you've got like a tally in your mind of going, okay, 1, 2, whether you base it on actual numbers, like you actually counting the stagger build up, or you just basing it on like which attacks you've done and saying, like, I've done 2 heavy, 1 normal with a little bit of break in between. Is that what you've sort of got running through your mind as you're going through the fight to get ready for those staggers?
Yeah, so I mean, for Moog, it's kind of it's a script now. It's like, okay, there's certain attacks that you're doing. If you get a headshot after the first stagger, then you switch to this option, this script. If you don't get a headshot, you switch to another script. With Consort Radon, it is kind of like keeping track. But honestly, when I'm in the middle of the fight and like a high pressure situation, potentially a world record, I just keep staying in the fight, doing as many punishes as I can, doing the right punishes. And when I see the freeze proc or when I see the stagger that I want, I'm like, okay, I can take a deep breath now because I did it right.
Went into the technical aspects there a bit more. Now, the sort of mindset query that I had was in terms of focus. So in the example I'm thinking of is I saw some of you prep for a different run, but you don't know, I think you did a couple of runs off. It was a Great Stars route for
yes.
That was DLC percent or console, wasn't it? And my query with that is because I saw you practice Moog again and again. I think it was over a couple of streams. how do you maintain like focus on doing the same thing over and over again? I know that is the same for every split. Like you'd have to do that with every boss, but obviously there can be an aspect of getting bored. So I'm just wondering how you keep doing that over several hours at a time.
Well, luckily, speedrunning Elden Ring is one of my favorite activities to do, especially when it's a route that I enjoy. So for some reason, I don't know why, I really, really like doing DLC speedruns of of this game. I think it's because the bosses have more health and there's more variety to how the fight can go, especially in defeat consort category. It's kind of like Dark Souls 3 fights where you adapt to what the boss is doing and you just try to punish as efficiently and as quickly as possible. The 80% route kind of turned into, I mean, it hasn't always been like a script fest where you just follow a script, learn the script, execute the script as well as you can. But with the DLC routes, there has been a lot of improvise, and I think I really like that. Now for the focus part, yeah, I can. People can get bored for some reason. I don't get bored with some of this stuff. If I do get bored, I'll just switch to either practicing another boss or maybe just doing runs. Like sometimes I'm practicing a little bit and then I'm like, why am I practicing this? Let's just do runs. So then I switch to doing runs. But yeah, with Great Stars, I believe with the Moog thing, it was mostly trying to find the best way to deal with that fight because I was dealing with a clock, like another clock in the fight other than his health gate. With the Great Stars, I also was using rot, so there was also a clock to when he was getting to the nihil point, to the 50% health. And because of that, I had to, one, learn how to fight him quicker, get better punishes. I also had to, like, you can just innovate and try different ways of different attack sequences to get to the desired outcome of one cycling him. And I was mostly, I think some of it was essentially trying to hone it in and get it consistent for runs. And then the other part was the exploration. Okay, +7 is working. Let's try +5. Because if we can get +5 consistent, then we're going to cut out 50. We're going to cut out like at least 30 seconds at the start of the run. So then that's kind of free time save. So let's get that. If we can get it consistent, then we'll cut it out. But sometimes you find it's not consistent, and then it turns into how can I make it consistent? Is there a way to make it consistent? So then it just it builds up on itself, and then you realize that it's been a few hours, and you're like, oh, all right, well, I don't think I can do this, but we might have learned how to fight them quicker, so we can apply that to the +7. And I don't know, there's different parts of the fight that I might focus on at a time, like early stagger. How quickly can I stagger him at the start of the fight? And it's like, okay, I'm learning that, so now I can be like, okay, how do I get to 50% most efficiently? And then I try different ways and try to figure out which way works best. So it's kind of, step-by-step process, and try to make it like a puzzle. How do I solve this encounter as efficiently and as consistently as possible?
It's just reminded me saying that of, I thought I was going to say earlier, but I forgot, that in both introductions, quote unquote, for any percent, or at least the introduction to the speed running or challenge running of the base game, and for the DLC, you started with low damage challenges, like for the Purgatory for the base game, and for DLC just straight up 0+0. And I imagine that's transferred a lot into all these other stuff, including like events that I'm going to bring up shortly, in terms of you actually know all of these bosses because you've had to spend that time learning them, because obviously you can't rush a +0 or a low damage fight, or an R1 fight, I should say.
Yeah, I think the +0, the decision to do a +0 playthrough was one of the best decisions I've made in terms of like my Elden Ring content that I've been putting out for the past like half year. Yeah, it definitely prepared me for what I was going to encounter in the future, like the speed runs, the bingo events, the Randomania, like all these different things that I've been a part of. That definitely has helped a lot.
I think we'll go into a couple of those, but sort of a 90-degree left turn, just because
All
I
right.
don't think I'll find another way to bring it up. I do want to speak about it. Is a no-hit run that you've done being Lies of P.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fine. We can, yeah, just get right into it.
And I was just wondering, first of all, I love the game. I think it's like one of the best, like
It is
one of
incredible.
the favorites of
It's
that
an
year.
incredible game.
And was interested why that particular one to go into to do a no hit, because it's very difficult. It's Haley.
So yeah, the when I was doing my first playthrough, I was thinking about, I'm like, all right, am I gonna try to speed run this? Is this just like a casual playthrough? Am I gonna do anything further? Do I want to do anything further? And then like I experienced the bosses and just the whole entire environment of the game, and I'm like, this is really fun. I want to do some kind of challenge with it. And people were doing speed runs of it, and there were a lot of glitches, and they started doing like these zips and stuff in the and like launches of the character to get to different places and stuff. And I don't know, I like the glitchless side of speed running, and the route was kind of slow. I'm like, I don't really want to do like a 2.5 hour speed run.
Yeah.
So instead, I'm gonna do a 2.5 hour hitless run, which makes absolutely no sense. But it was more like designed, at least in my mind, it was framed more like I can be more free with my decisions. I don't have to choose a specific weapon. I don't have to abide by the route that the speedrun meta is becoming. I can be creative, and Liza P really fueled that with the mechanics in the game where you can take apart weapons and combine their blades and handles to make new weapons with different move sets and different fable arts, the skill arts essentially in that game. And because of that, I was like, I wanna do a hitless route. And man, that was an endeavor because I did not realize how difficult that thing was gonna be. That was easily the hardest hitless run I've ever done.
I've played the game, so I know difficulties, but in terms of the hitless aspect, what was the key difficulties of the run?
Oh god, I innovated. I changed so many things in that run over the course of it. There were times where I had some parry aspects, like guard parries in some late fights, like Manus and Laxasia. And well, I guess those were the two that were like the really towards the late game. I didn't do Nameless Puppet in my run. I just did the 80%, which was still
I was,
2 hours and
I was going.
45
I was
minutes.
going to
Like,
say I don't think
Jesus.
I know just is the right word, but I think it like lowers it to the point of yeah, but it's still quite a long any very difficult any percent.
It's just one boss less, guys. It's not a big deal. Um, yeah, so like that would, like I had that in the route, and then eventually I would get to that point in a run, and then I would get hit, and it would feel really bad. And I'm like, okay, I need to find something that is more consistent, because if I miss this parry timing, my run's dead. And I don't really like that because I can get nervous. I might, press a button a little slower or a little faster, and then the run's dead. And it feels bad. So I took those out the end of the run, and and my route was pretty different from others, where other people would choose one weapon and kind of stick with it. I chose to have a whole catalog of weapons, where I started with the, I don't know what the weapon's called. It's like the curved sword. It might be a scimitar at the start. Oh, it was the saber. I
Okay.
started with the saber, and then I transitioned to the coil. Then after the coil, I got the wrench, and then with the wrench, I combined it with the coil handle, and then I got the dancer handle, and that had guard parry, and then I used that and got up to the area with the green monster, and there's this city lawn spear, and you can get that, and then you can get the tyrant dagger from this box that you get in the opera house, and you combine those, and it turns it into this really fast weapon with the best thrusting charge attack I've ever seen in a video game ever. It is so good. The moveset is beautiful, and I switched to that, and then I just keep using that till the end. But it was like a strength build to it was a motivity build to a technique build. Like it switched between the two, and I thought it was really fun and creative, and it was still pretty fast too, at least at the time when we were running alongside others. My route was, I think, the fastest of them until new strats were found after I stopped doing it.
I was going to say, it does sound very innovative, because for a vast majority of no-hit runs, normally the goal is get as strong as possible, as fast as possible, because then you can just go boss rush afterwards. So the fact that you change so much throughout sounds like a very interesting route.
Yeah, and Liza P also kind of gated your progression. Unlike Elden Ring, where you can get a +9 in the first 45 minutes, with Liza P, you have to you have to progress through the story and kill bosses that kind of block your pathway to upgrades. So you can like get as strong as possible for each boss, but sometimes it's not necessary. And that's something that I kind of learned in Elden Ring. Like people were doing this +9 route for Serpent Hunter, and I'm like, this is overkill. Do you guys see how much damage you guys are doing to these bosses? You can do this with a +6 easy. And you don't spend as much time setting up, and and the fight's gonna be just as fast. Like why aren't you doing this? But yeah, that kind of philosophy also was applied to Liza P.
Yeah, we'll just skim through a couple of the moments and just blown away by the damage output you can still do with like the wrench and the coil. Like it's
insane. The puppet hand axe blade also, I think, is like one of the strongest. Blanks was using that a lot. Yorin was also using that a lot for like a strength build, and the damage is insane what you can do.
I think a lot of people listening who may have only just like casually played Liza P's probably having like Sassia in mind of going, wait, you can do that hitless? Especially the thing that comes to my mind is literally her when she drops down in front of you. I never got the timing down for that. When she shoots all the projectiles and then she just launches herself at her. I feel I never got the timing on that to do it consistently, and it was like half luck.
Yeah, so that again took a lot of trial and error. I was learning the parry method. Oh no, I think I did do the parry method. I was learning the guard parry method at first, and then that was the thing that like I got hit on. I was like, I'm not doing this again. I was hitless up to this point. I'm not doing this again. That was 2.5 hours of a hitless run gone down the drain. So I was like, I'm just gonna do the regular parry. It's easier. And yeah, the timing was different. The electric balls that shoot at you, they're always different, so you have to react according to them. But some people do use the perfect guard grindstone that lets you just hold the button down and it parries everything for you. I'm one of the people that think you shouldn't be able to do that, but that's a whole another debate. That doesn't matter. But I didn't choose to do it, so I had to learn the timing and adapt to the way that the electric balls were shot at you every single run, every single practice attempt.
Main reason Liza P came to mind anyway is just at the time of recording, we've literally just got the first trailer out of the DLC or the expansion, or how you describe it.
I watched 10 seconds and immediately turned it off because it started getting amazing.
Oh, so did you not watch through it?
No, I like to be blind in those kinds of experiences, like Elden Ring. I was surprised I actually did the Nightreign network test. Usually I'm like, oh, I want to just experience this the first day it comes out, which I did do for Elden Ring, like what the base game and the DLC and stuff. But yeah, for Lies of P, I'm trying to keep the same kind of situation where I'm pretty blind to everything. I just know there was snow in one area, and then there was this boss, and I was like, okay, I'm done. I can't watch this anymore. There's spoils.
No, I shall remain silent then. I can only.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I can only attest that it continued to look amazing throughout the rest of the trailer.
I completely believe you. I'm really excited for that. It's in the summer, right? June, I think.
I think so.
Is what they said.
I think so. I keep getting the dates mixed up because I keep thinking because Nightreign the date came out as May, but
that's the
mixing that
that's the 30th.
Yeah.
Of May. Yeah. So I'm excited for that for sure. That's gonna be I'm gonna be playing that a lot when it comes out.
How was the network test? I did get
since-
a key, so I wouldn't have had the time anyway. But how has the network test been going for Nightreign?
The first day was full of technical issues, or the first time slot was full of technical issues for the PS5 side. But then they fixed it, and we were able to play with randoms, and it was fun. I was learning the gameplay loop and learning how to upgrade my character so that way I could survive the next day and eventually the last boss. But then I was able to play with friends today, this morning, and it was a way better experience. I loved it.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be a huge part of the Souls community when it comes out, just because you can just play with two others and talk through it and have a good time. It's kind of like it's a bit feels like Fortnite, but a PvE side of Fortnite.
Yeah.
Where you drop in and then just talk and I don't know how you are with cursing on this show.
Yeah, it's fine.
And shoot the shit, and just have a good time with your friends. So I'm really looking forward to that when it comes out.
What I'm hoping for this sort of hoping, just like I think Nightreign's the biggest opportunity for Fromsoftware to just go like do anything. It's like a parallel world. They don't need to care about the lore. Just drop DLC bosses in there. Like I know they've already announced like DLC part. Just do like
they said it's not canon.
Yep.
So just go wild with it. Make it as random as you want. Add as many bosses as you want. Like just different maps. Like just make it as fun as possible.
Have a map of Shulver. Have a map of the Ring City. Drop the Ivory King in like Wonder Night bosses.
Get maps from other games. Yeah, that would be really cool.
Just, like it's such an opportunity that I think they could go like just keep it around, maybe every year, put an expansion, DLC, or whatever. Just have that as their little pet thing that they can just keep throwing stuff at because they don't have to worry about the story aspect.
Yeah, just some potential content. Well, honestly, for like us content creators, and then also for them, like just completely just create new experiences for all of us. That would be amazing.
That just reminded me. I remember watching Chris's reaction to it with Domo, and it was like, "Our careers are saved" when like the Elden Ring came out of the TGA, like the Game Awards.
I had the same kind of reaction to it. I was like, "Oh my god, infinite content."
I mean, that is actually better way to segue than anything else. Because I wanted to talk about Bingo Brawlers and a bit of background. So Bingo Brawlers is I'd say best way I can describe it is a competitive Elden Ring competition or event that Captain Domo, who's a streamer and content creator, has put on and has done 4 seasons. So I think over the last 2 to 3 years, and done it each time with the goal of it being head-to-heads between players, going for objectives on a 5x5 bingo board. So do a certain boss, collect certain items. The most recent one being mainly DLC focused, but previous seasons has been 2v2, and then it's basically innovated each season. So a bit of background for people who may not be aware of what the event was. There is. And I want to ask your experience because I'm very impressed by Domo's innovation between seasons on like trying new things, even when some things may not. I mean, when you're trying something different, there's always opinions on both sides, isn't there? So how's your experience been through 3 seasons, I think?
Yeah, I was invited in season 2 Luckily, that was a great opportunity that I had to take. And yeah, so season 2 was randomized base game DLC or randomized base game bingo. And it was a lot different than season 1 because season 1 had a very common meta of I'm going to use the samurai class and I'm just going to use uchi everywhere.
Yep.
And what was really nice was that this randomized weapons and spells change, it made it such that every experience of bingo that you have, every game that you have is different.
Yep.
So you were able, you had to adapt to the situation. You could like figure out meta for, you know, weapon checks and stuff, but sometimes those don't pan out and you have to pivot. It's like, okay, Tree Sentinel didn't give me a good halberd. There's not a good halberd check in Liurnia. Oh, the axe check was bad. Okay, round table was bad. All right, let's start scrounging for beach merchant. Nope. Okay, and then you have to decide, okay, what is the best weapon I can use from this? And usually when you do a lot of checks, you find something, but sometimes you did have to settle for a smithing weapon. So it was important to find out, okay, how can I upgrade that as quickly as possible? So that was one of the first things that I looked into, and it was probably one of the most memorable moments in season 2 for me, and maybe for the viewers as well, was when I was facing CBD the first match, and he was just building the diagonal, and it looked like it was super threatening. And the whole time I was telling Chad, like, just don't worry about it. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Cooking.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He's doing all these early squares. I'm setting up the plus 12 smithing stone. He doesn't know. And then I started stalling because I was so ahead on that square. And they were freaking out. Everybody was freaking out. Like, why are you going for Godric's Great Room right now? Why aren't you getting the plus 12? He's gonna win in like 25 minutes. I'm like, no, he's not. And then we find out after in the interview, like he was just getting one of the bell bearings and he was gonna go for the second bell bearing after. So I had like another 3 or so minutes left to kill before he even did it. And that was kind of a learning experience for both, like for everybody in the league. Like you can like sometimes you can go for the bingo, but sometimes you need to expect that your opponent's also gonna be able to block it in a faster than you can actually do the square. So you need to either decide, will I go for this bingo and potentially lose the game and have it as a high risk, high reward play? Or am I going to play safe and threaten that bingo and then switch off to something else? So that kind of mind game started becoming really important, and it caused people to threaten many lines at once and then choose one, or threaten one line and then switch immediately to another one, like a hidden one that Kata liked to do a lot, where he was building pressure on one line. Obviously, the opponent would want to block that line, but then he just switched to another line, and then that line was just too much pressure. So it was for season 2. That was really fun being introduced to that, and I was very fortunate to get second place in that season. Season 3
I just want to
completely.
Just before we go to season 3, I just want to add on to that from a viewer perspective. Those mind games and that sort of trying to lead the opponent on whether you are or not doing certain squares was a very huge part of season 4 when it was DLC. Like a very really interesting part of it. And
season 4 mind games are crazy. First they were like, oh, there's no mind games. Then it was everything's a mind game. And then it turns into, okay, sometimes we have a mind game. Like it was so, the development of that season was crazy. And if you weren't playing like every day or every other day in practice matches, you were not going to keep up with it. And I felt that's how I felt. So I had to play like every day against people.
I mean,
because it was a steamroll of new metas and new new ways of playing.
Because I thought Domo was going to lose hair over the stress of every player pivoting on every square,
Yeah, that kind of became a thing where the pivoting was so God, when you watch it, it's like, man, we pivoted a lot. But every time we pivoted, it was usually the right decision. It was like, well, I shouldn't be doing this square. I should be doing something else. Right? Like I don't know. It was it's funny though when you look at it from the outside.
And it's also difficult to, on both sides, I guess, both players and the audience, because the audience know they have more information, but it's also hard to turn off.
Yeah, exactly. So they see us pivot, and then it's like, well, obviously you would have been fine because the other person's doing something else. But then you have to think, well,
we have the
do I know that?
Don't. Yeah.
Do I know that's what the person is doing? Maybe I do, but there's also a chance I don't know, or I know that they're doing something else, and maybe that something else is more important, so I need to chase them on it, or like you have to look at it through one lens, not both.
I will say it didn't seem as, again, obviously, I'm going to stop repeating myself by saying from a viewer's perspective, but it didn't seem to be as much of an effect in season 3, just because that one was teams of 2v2 and the matches seem to be too quick in most cases for that to take an effect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, you are right on that. So season 3 is, if people don't know, it was a 2v2 season. So we had a team of 2 players, and we would face off against another team of 2. And because of that, it was the same. Well, the game was actually different. There were some graces that were unlocked, and you could get access to the Erdtree and Lake of Rod and all these other late game locations very early on. So because of that, you could develop a really quick and powerful character, and you can kind of steamroll the squares on the board. So there was, of course, like the team aspect of who does what, does someone upgrade really quickly and do the end game squares, and then the other person does really fast early game squares. But the thing is that there's 4 people working on the board at the same time. So if you decide to hold a square, either of the 2 people that you're against could take it from you. And because squares are getting marked quicker than in 1v1, the turnaround is a lot faster if you're actually holding the square. So because of that, holding squares didn't really become a meta, and it kind of went away towards, at least I don't know when it was in the season, but it did go away. And it was like, okay, you just gotta, if you're working on one square, work on it, because your opponent could be working on that same square, and if you devote time to something else, then you might lose that square. So it was a bit of a different way of playing, especially compared to season 2. And it took me a lot of time to understand it. I did a lot of practice matches because of it, with not just Zoodle, who was my partner, but with other people in the league.
Yep.
Just to understand, like, how are people playing this? What am I supposed to do different to get better, to stay with the top teams? And I think I learned pretty well at the end, but unfortunately Zoodle and I made some mistakes in the matches. Like we had really good game plans, but then we would make like some skill issue type mistake. Like died, like for me, example, the last game I died in Volcano Manor I think 2 or 3 times, and because of that we lost like 2 or 3 squares, even though I would have been way ahead of the Gino and Bree on those squares if I didn't die. And that, so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that there.
It's no worries. Something that's been across and might even be a difficulty now for Domo, is that the skill level is so high after season 4, with like characters like I think the newest one was like Adef in season 3, and then absolutely came in and destroyed, like going into season 3, season 4 has just done so well. But now like everyone is like knows the routes, knows the places, knows the bosses inside out. That I'm guessing it might be difficult if no one's looking to like widen the league or expand it, or he's gonna like segment it like football.
Yeah. So I think it's hard to introduce new players into the league. I think he did a very good job choosing the people he did for season 4. V-Swed was incredible with his devotion and his practice. Blanks is an absolute master at whatever he does. So when I heard he was in the league, I'm like, he's gonna be in the finals. And that's exactly what happened. And then Pooh Bear, Grand Pooh Bear, he is such a great guy. He was very devoted to learning bingo. He had a lot less experience than all of us in Elden Ring, but he put the time in and he learned the game mode and the bosses and how to read the board very well. And he probably, if he didn't have an issue with Lamenter, he would have won his last game. And that shows how far he got from the beginning, which is incredible. It's an amazing amount of progress.
That was so hype, that last that last match with Lamenter and Bushy.
Yeah, that was so great. I was off my chair, just I was screaming at the screen. And in the future, you know, there might be something. So with another group called Bingo Club, it's kind of like just a community driven bingo club that they held an event where it was a quote unquote pro and an amateur or a beginner, however they want to describe it. And it was 2v2 in this new game mode with base game and DLC. It was really fun. We had a great time. So something like that could potentially be a way to introduce more people into Bingo Brawlers if he wants to, where you have, you know, maybe eight teams. I don't know, maybe even more, 10 teams, and then have a pro or somebody who's been in Bingo Brawlers for a couple seasons or at least one season, and then somebody who's brand new. And maybe that's one way to expand it.
It's just reminded me of like a pro-am, if you've ever if you know like played or know about golf, where you have like an amateur who is still like so in those sorts of events in golf, like it's a professional and an amateur, but an amateur is not the right word really, because the amateur is still a very, very good player in
exactly
events.
Like all these people that are being introduced to Bingo Brawlers, like when they put the time in, they are very, very good at what they do, right? So you just have to put the time in for bingo to reach a very high skill level, I would say. And I think a lot of people can do it. I mean, there's strategy part to it, right? That you have to learn, but most of it is execution. And if you practice, you can do it.
And imagine that it scratches perhaps the same itch for you in terms of it is a huge amount about routing and knowing the fastest ways to objectives and the squares and those sorts of things in similar ways to speedrunning.
So especially season 4, Domo announced it, and then I was gonna go into a speedrunning grind, but then he announced it and I was like, I have to put this to the side. I have to practice bingo because if I don't, I'm gonna fall behind. And I don't want to fall behind in bingo. I want to hopefully be one of the best. So yeah, like once he announced it, I was already like the first week of announcement, I was working on the new squares, trying to figure out the best routes in pathing and what are the fastest larval tiers and all this stuff. Like, and that all, I mean, it reaps its rewards, right? Like when I was doing practice matches at the start, I was kind of the front runner. Like apparently people were saying like I'm gonna win the league this season, which didn't happen, but that's okay. You live and you learn. And I think that's just because I was practicing, and most of them weren't really practicing as much as me.
I think it came into like halfway through the season, maybe a little bit earlier, and it was great, quote unquote, second on entertainment because it felt like I could put on Twitch at any time of day, open up one of the streams, and someone was practicing bingo or playing bingo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was so much bingo that season.
I think I could open up V-Sweats on any day, and it would have been because I think he was doing it very often.
Yeah, my stream, V-Sweat stream, CBDs were blanks. We're just all on bingo. solo, like 1v1s, like anything, studying previous matches, anything, just to get better.
Shifting maybe to another ring because I'm aware of I'm taking you a little bit longer than I initially thought I would in terms of time. But
It's okay. I'm apparently talking a lot.
we'll talk about randomizer events. So a couple of mind is speaking of Zoodle, the Randomania, and as well as Force's event recently, which I think's coming back next month, of the Deathless Randomizer event. And again, I think that's probably a different skill set to the routine because it's more reactive in your knowledge of the game, isn't it? Of like the areas.
Yeah, so Zoodle's Randomania. So he first did it as like a little weekend tournament for base game, and it was like an 80% randomizer race. It was like 8 people, and there were two groups of 4. And that was fun to do. I wasn't really too into the randomizer scene. Like it's fun to watch, but I didn't really see the point in playing it. And then I did that, and I grew some more interest in it. And then he decided to do Randomania, which was for the DLC. And what him and Matt came up with the randomizer and just the what he decided to do for the game mode made it so much fun and even better to watch afterwards, or like when you're not playing, watch the matches. It was super entertaining, and I really enjoyed that experience with Bree as my partner. We ended up winning it, which was really nice. I don't know how we did it. Every time we were playing a match and one of us made a mistake, we're like, we're behind, we're not gonna win, we're behind. And then somehow we won the matches. I was like, okay, I guess we're not behind. I guess we won. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And it was cool because the bosses were all like remembrance bosses. So we had the DLC remembrances in there as well, and it was a lot of fun to learn those move sets in the randomized setting. For Deathless Randomizer League, that was I thought Forza did a great job with the first season. I may have not put in as much time as others, which is why I wasn't in the top 16. I was in the top 32 bracket. And then I died to the putrescent, and I knocked me off the cliff near Jarburg. With a crazy combo of it was he was doing the fire move at like when he transitions in phase 2, or like when it is middle period. I don't even know if he phase transitions. It's just an attack in the middle of the fight. And then he decided to do the RNG fourth fire attack, which caught me. And then I was staggered. And then he decided to do the whinny, the horse whinny that has like the sound hitbox, and it knocked me off the cliff and killed me. And that cost me the trip to the finals in the top 32. But I did get to the semis, which is really I'm happy about.
I was gonna say I think it's again where it's a lot more impressive than perhaps you make it sound, because I probably should have started with Forza, who's another speedrunning streamer, created this Deathless event where there was 8 randomized seed of Elden Ring, and the goal was to beat as many bosses as you could in 2 hours, deathless, or as in few deaths as possible, depending on how they're doing it. Well, it was deathless. Venice, I was thinking about practice.
Exactly. So there was kind of a set route at the start from a previous event called the Gods Cup. One of the qualifying parts of that event was to do exactly that, kill things in 2 hours. But I think it was without randomization. I think it was just base game and then kill as many bosses as you can in 2 hours. Yeah, so they incorporated the randomization into it, and it made it more like a unique experience every time. Like some seeds were really terrible, and you would just do poorly or make a mistake, and then boom, your seed's done, because once you die, that's it. And he was very strict about that. He was like, if you die, that's your run. The whole thing is about permadeath. It's about being deathless. So that made the that made the runs, the seeds more challenging, definitely, because if you died, the run was dead.
Part I was going to say is, because I started this sort of explanation with just saying that you're putting it down a bit, but in terms of the number of bosses to be in that top 32, top 16 was something like around 60 bosses in that 2-hour marker, and that is very, very impressive work. I attempted it. I did do well. I did like 40-ish average or something like that. Like 60 bosses in 2 hours in Elden Ring is probably impressive for any casual out there, and more impressive people who like know the game inside and out as well. It's like the quality skill level in that league was still very high.
Yeah, and the best part was that it was open to everyone, right? So a lot of people who I didn't really know about were like at the top of the leaderboard. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. I didn't know some of these people were doing Elden Ring, and then you get to check them out, and then you learn more about them and stuff. Especially that was
like
really
French
cool.
Runners.
Really, what? Huh?
So I was saying like a lot of French runners I saw who obviously I don't speak French.
Runners,
so
yeah, there were some French runners that I wasn't aware of. I knew they were very into the randomized scene, but I didn't know how many were there into the randomized scene, and there were a lot of French runners.
I think I'm gonna ask one more random point, which is gonna take about maybe a minute to answer, maybe even less.
All right,
and then we'll go on some quick questions to finish. So I've got to ask, where did I can't even ask this because I'm gonna have to set like a visual for people. So say you're on Twitch, listeners, you're on Twitch, you're enjoying your day, you go into search bar, you put up NuclearPastaTom into it, you click on the stream, and you are greeted by some speedruns and the most jacked Godfrey you've ever seen with boulder traps and shoulders, this cartoon little image. Where did that come from? Or where does the idea for that come?
So my original like profile idea was going to be Kratos, just because I really love the new God of War games. And I like Christopher Judge as an actor and as a person. But the Horaloo came from a meme that kind of originated at my stream, where if you type in !gimme the into my chat, there's a command that pops up a clip of me dealing with Horaloo during Hitless practice, and it's a classic. So Horaloo just kind of became a part of the stream, and then somebody offered very graciously to make me an avatar of Horaloo, and Horace, who is the artist, and Zoodle, who also helped out, showed me this product, and I was like, this is perfect. I don't want anything to change. Just send me this. This is amazing.
And I'm guessing because the PNG changes as you speak, I'm guessing that just like senses like voice inputs and just opens and closes to each one.
Yeah, it's a very simple. Well, it's a setup that we have in OBS. You can also do it with another program called VideoTube, but I'm using OBS because that's how we set it up. You talk, the mouth opens. You talk higher, like louder, then the mouth opens even more. And it's really nice. And then the eyes are just essentially on a loop, going left, right, middle.
Yeah, I've caught myself a few times thinking, "Oh, he's reading chat. Oh, wait, no, it's Godfrey."
Yeah, people have said that too. It's like, are they keeping track of your eye movement? I'm like, no, guys, I'm not looking to the right when I'm fighting Consort Radon. Like, come on.
Just like, God, his multitasking is great.
Yeah, no.
Right.
I've gotten better.
Right, so gonna go some quick questions, and then we shall call it for today.
All right.
So, if you could give one piece of advice for someone new to speedrunning or hitless running, what would that advice be?
I feel like the answer is different for both. For speedrunning, you know what? No, it's the same. For speedrunning and for hitless, have fun. Don't worry about being perfect at the start. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has bad days as well. There's many days where I didn't get anything done. Like I would just reset to the first 10 minutes of the run. over and over and over again because I kept making dumb mistakes. And that happens. We're human. And, cherish the small accomplishments that you make along the way, because that'll help fuel your that'll help drive you to be better at what you're trying to do.
Enjoy the journey, the routine, all that stuff that adds up to that final one.
Yes, exactly.
If one game could be released tomorrow, an announced game, unannounced, a sequel or a remake that you've always wanted or would want, what game would it be?
Oh no. You say quick question. God of War 3. I want what happens after Valhalla.
Okay.
Or after Asgard.
Would you want, because there's rumors every day, irrespective of whether anything's actually happening, but is there okay, I would really like Egyptian. Like, I don't know, it's a very basic,
I would
cold...
like Egyptian too. I'm with you on that. I think that would be really cool.
I feel like it's a very vanilla take now, but I don't care. I want it.
I don't care either. I want it too. I want it.
I don't know how their story-wise going to go, because I feel, especially with the Valhalla story, sort of like set up a big aspect of like moving on from the thing, even though a good part of the story of 2018 and Ragnarok was Kratos, but I think Valhalla also added to that. So I'm interested, if they went that way, how they would story-wise make it make sense to Kratos being back to what he does well. But any case,
I have no idea, and that's why other people are working on it, if they're working on it.
I trust and cross fingers and toes. If you could recommend one game for its soundtrack, which game would it be?
Fury. Furi.
I've not heard that game before.
It is an incredible soundtrack. You'll hear it a lot in my stream. Wave Shaper, Carpenter Brute, a whole bunch of other artists took part in that, and it's incredible.
What sort of game genre is it?
It's action and kind of like boss rush. So you have like you have a main character with a sword. I think you also have a gun. I don't know, it's been a while since I played. But you go into each room, and each room has a boss, and you learn how to fight the boss, and they're all different, and it's all incredible, and the music complements them so well.
It shall be added to the going on to Spotify afterwards. If you can think of one, most hyped or fond memory or moment on stream or in your challenge running career?
Most hype, oh man, there's been a couple, but I would say winning the Nitro speedrun competition.
Okay.
Because I put in a good amount of work. It was essentially the 80% glitchless run in real time, not in-game time. And it turned into like racing against other speedrunners for it. And it was broken up. Like the first day was 8 hours grinding for the best time you can, and then that puts you in potentially the top 10. And then it was whittled down from top 10 to top 5 to top 3 or something like that. And somehow I won it all. And it was a crazy moment because I didn't know. I told chat, I told everyone, like, I don't want to know how other runners are doing. So I just played my game, and then I killed Elden Beast, and everyone erupted. And I was like, did I win? And then it just happened. It was amazing.
Awesome. And so then the final thing I'll say then is, what are the future plans of NPT or NuclearPastaTom?
Oh man. So I am currently working on a new route for the All Remembrances Glitchless category. I might work on learning the 80% glitchless Death's Poker route for Elden Ring again, or for the first time. And then I'm also learning Mario 64 speedrun for the 16 stars, hoping to get a sub 25 for that. And then I've also promised my community to do another Crab's Treasure Hitless run.
Oh yeah, I still mean to get to that.
So I haven't started that yet, but it is on the docket. And who knows, I will try not to push it away with all the amazing games and DLCs that are coming out in the next few months, but no promises.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be a busy year, definitely.
It is gonna be a great year. Yeah.
And if people wanted to check you out, where would they be looking?
Yeah, so you can find me over at twitch.tv/NuclearPastaTom. I also have a YouTube channel. I've been trying to upload more frequently there. At least right now, they've just been world records, but maybe there will be more content in the future. And it's Nuclear Pasta, just Nuclear Pasta for the YouTube handle. And that's pretty much it where you'll find me. And you'll see me in Twitch chats everywhere.
I know I said last question, but I've got to ask now that I brought that up. Where did nuclear pasta come from?
Okay. So nuclear pasta is a scientific term.
Okay.
It originated, or at least for me, it originated as part of my first research project.
Okay.
And it is the theoretical inner crust of a neutron star. So when a star is large enough but not too large, when it experiences a supernova, it will not collapse into a black hole. It doesn't reach the Chandrasekhar limit. So it collapses into itself but not completely, and the atoms merge into one another, like actual individual atoms, the protons and the neutrons. They merge into one another and they start forming these shapes that when you simulate them in like molecular dynamic simulations, they form these phases that look like pasta structures. So you can get like sheets of protons and neutrons that look like lasagna. You can get tubes of protons and neutrons that look like spaghetti. You can get balls of protons and neutrons that look like gnocchi. And then it's kind of, you can have the flip also, where you have holes of tubes that's called anti-spaghetti, holes of like spheres, and that's called anti-gnocchi. So
these are the technical terms.
that is the technical term, yes. And that's where nuclear pasta comes from. So every time somebody asks that, I always enjoy answering it because it's part of my scientific career.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, sorry, I had to add that on at the end because I couldn't
Absolutely.
leave without it.
More than I love when people ask me that.
That's that. I've let this go on for a lot longer, so I appreciate taking the time to like hang around a lot longer than I said at the start. But I do appreciate it. Hope you've had a decent time today, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely loved being on this podcast. Thank you for inviting me. Sorry I talked so much.
No worries.
But sometimes I have a lot to say, apparently.
It's no issues at all. I hope everyone.
It was great talking with you.
And you, definitely. I hope everyone has enjoyed it as well. Hope you've enjoyed listening, and hope everyone listening has a great rest of your morning, day, or evening, depending on when you're listening. And we'll catch you for the next episode. If you enjoyed that conversation and want to hear more with amazing guests, be sure to head over to youtube.com/@nohitpodcast or waveloci.com/nohitpodcast